Hey guys, how is everybody doing? Happy Monday and happy MLK Day. Hopefully, all of you are having a pretty safe and good Monday. Now, today might be a very confusing day. You're probably wondering, why am I reviewing this movie? Well, what's the occasion? So, unless you're in like pretty warm, decent weather, the last few days where I live, the weather has been below 40 degrees and has been reaching negative degrees. So, I was kind of thinking to myself, what would be a good movie to watch during this cold weather to where I can't go outside, I can't really do anything because it's so damn cold outside? And then it hit me. Wait, John Carpenter's The Thing. That is one of my favorite movies, and that's the perfect time to watch it during this type of weather because the weather outside right now. I'm thinking to myself, and I might not get this opportunity again. I decided to review John Carpenter's The Thing because of because of my weather these last few days. And I'm gonna be completely honest. I've never been so scared to review a movie. Not because the movie itself is scary. It's more because I'm afraid of the film itself. Because I'm afraid that they're gonna fuck up this review. Because now there are very few movies to where I feel I need to do a review right. I need to give the movie a justice for how great the movie is. Now I reviewed the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is my favorite horror movie of all time, and I felt I did pretty good with that. But John Carpenter's The Thing is just one of the best movies ever made. And I'm just intimidated to review the movie because I'm afraid I'm going to fuck it up because I'm afraid there's going to be that one person that praises and loves this movie and this is their favorite movie of all time, and then they're going to leave me a comment that you disrespected us. This was the worst review in the world. Which hopefully I won't get that. But this movie just scares me because I'm just scared to review it because I want to do this movie great. I want to give this movie justice. I want to make almost every fan of this movie proud because I've never done that. I've never felt this way reviewing a movie. So please forgive me as I go through this movie. I'm going to try my best to give this movie the respect it deserves. I'm going to do my best. So please bear with me throughout this review. And before we begin, I want to share a little history on the thing. Now, unless you've never seen this movie or unless you don't know the history on this movie, back when this movie was released in 1982, you know how this movie is one of the most praised horror movies of all time. You heard my little rant going on how I want to give this movie justice for how great the movie is. Did you know this? It wasn't like that back in 1982, back when it was first released. Back when the movie was first released, it was a critical and box office failure. This movie had a budget of almost like $25 million, I believe the budget was. And get this, it only made $3 million. That is not a lot of money to make back for your movie. And a lot of people theorize why this movie did not do so good. A lot of people ask themselves, what the fuck were people on back in the 80s? Like, when you watch this movie today, it's a great horror movie. It's a masterpiece of the horror genre. But when you look back at the 80s, people didn't like this movie. Now, some theorize it has to do with its gory and dark tone compared to E.T., which came out only a few weeks early because of that. E.T. was a more family-friendly alien movie, and then The Thing came along, which a more explicit, horrifying version of Aliens, where it was really gory for its time. I just think that audience wasn't ready for its gory practical effects for the time. I think that's one of my theories why this movie did not do so good. But it probably also doesn't help that Blade Runner came out the same weekend. Hmm, that's not good now, is it? Now, I think Marty McFly said it best.
Guess you guys aren't ready for that yet. But your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, that's just basically how it went. That all the way, starting off with my positives, a very long, long list of positives for this fantastic movie, is I really love the score for this movie. The score is very haunting. It kind of, one thing I actually really, when I noticed when I rewatched this movie this time, I noticed that the score for this movie, it plays every time there's an alien. Now, you know how this movie is like a mystery to where we don't know who's the thing and all that, and they're like all the characters are standing in the room. Something I noticed when I was watching the movie, every time there was an alien in the room, the score would play a little bit. And I never noticed that to where the score would play here and there, and it's like, holy shit, that guy's a thing then. Like, well, when you watch this movie so many times, you know who's the thing and who isn't. But you also try to look for hints in this movie, and the score is one of the hints. It's masterful. It fits the tone of this movie. It's very haunting. What the hell was that? That I love about this movie, and something that doesn't really make audiences do anymore. I love how this movie makes the audience theorize, because if you are on the internet and if you literally look up the thing theories, you'll probably get thousands of videos of different theories, same theories, consistent theories. I love how this movie makes the audience theorize, and it lets the audience believe for themselves, because there's so many theories that people say, oh, this guy became the thing this way, this guy did this because of this. That's what I love about this movie, is because it makes the audience theorize. It makes you guess left and right. It's like, is this a thing? Is he a thing? How did he become this way? What's going on? Where did this character go? I love that. Some of my very favorite theories are like, when did Blair become the thing? Who was the thing at the end of the movie? Who sabotaged the blood? Who did this and that? But I also really like some of these theories. So one of my theories about this movie, like Blair, like, when did he become a thing? One of my theories about this movie and how Blair became the thing, I always like to believe that he did it when happened when it was in the shed, because when like McCready or nobody was checking on them, the thing came out and infected him. How? Some people also like to think it happened during his outburst, and like he was doing the outburst, but then he got infected by the thing, and then the thing was like finishing what he started, basically. That could be it, but here's how I think it is. When you're watching the movie, Blair is doing a like little computer check-in to see what would happen if the thing left this place and got to a whole city, and it shows that the whole world would be taken over by these things within 3 years if any of them got out. And as you watch that scene, you're seeing that he is drinking vodka. And then later on, when they lock Blair into the shed, you see that McCready takes a drink of the vodka. And McCready's human when they do the blood test. So I like to believe that it happened during the shed, because Blair was acting himself when they first put him in the shed, but when they go and check on him later, he seems different. His attitude has changed. He's been talking different. He's been just seeming strange, really. And and you also see a noose, and people question that noose. How I like to believe it. I believe Blair got infected while he was in the shed, but he knew there was an alien out there. He knew that someone was out there about to get him. So he made a noose and was going to kill himself before the alien could get to him, but I believe the alien got to him before the noose could, but I don't know why he wouldn't take down the noose. My theory is that maybe it happened when McCready and everybody was going out there, and so the Blair thing, sat down and acted normal and didn't have time to take down the noose. That is how I theorize how Blair became the thing. See, like that. A lot of people will probably disagree with me. A lot of people will probably say, I don't like that. I don't think that's the reason. That is okay. That is what this movie is supposed to do. It makes you disagree on theories. It makes you theorize. That is why I love this movie. And there's different theories out there. People say, this is the reason. People say, this is the reason. That is why I love this movie. There's so many different thoughts on this movie. I fucking love this movie for all of that. And I love disagreeing with theories, because it could be one way or the other. Also, go along with the theory thing. I love how this makes you re-guess every time. Excuse me. This movie makes you re-guess every time you re-watch the movie. Like, when you first watch it and you find out who's the thing, you're like, holy shit, that guy was a thing. But when you watch it for the second time, you go, huh, I wonder where he became the thing. Huh. Like, Palmer, the guy who freaked, like, during the blood test when we find out he's a thing. When did he become a thing? No one knows. Because I will say this, there is a point in the movie to where people saying that Palmer was the first to be infected, because executive producer Stuart Cohen, I believe his name was, he said that Palmer was the first to be infected. I don't believe that. I always thought Norris was the first one to be infected, because he seemed more quiet throughout this movie. He's never really been everywhere in this movie. He's more just been self-contained, really, and he also has heart problems throughout the movie, so maybe he was the first to be infected. And the reason I believe Palmer wasn't the first infected, because later on, Palmer and Childs share a joint together, and later on, Childs is still human, So I believe Norris was the first to be infected. But anyways, what the fuck was I talking about? Oh yeah, makes you guess. I got notes. Shut up. Makes you like re-guess every time you watch this movie. Like this person's infected, this person's infected. But every time you rewatch it, you try to find subtle hints in certain scenes. It's like, oh, when did he become a thing? Like maybe this part of the movie is became a thing, or maybe over here is when he became a thing. That's why I love this movie. Every time you rewatch this movie, it's like, I'm trying to figure out where he became a thing. Was it this part? Was it when he walked over here? Is when he was self-contained in a locker or something like that? You don't know. That is why I love this movie. It makes you just guess every time you rewatch it. Like when you first watch it, you don't know who's a thing. But that's why I love this movie. Even when you rewatch this movie knowing that somebody is a thing and you know they're a thing, the point of rewatching is to make you guess when they became a thing earlier. And I don't know if that was the intention, but if it wasn't, then they definitely got people a reason to rewatch this movie. Things that I really love about this movie is the cast. Of course, you've got Kurt Russell. This was the point of his career to where he stopped doing Disney movies and teamed up with John Carpenter to do these action and horror movies together. Like John Carpenter, Kurt Russell just had Escape from New York a few years before this movie came out. Then a few years later, you got its sequel, Escape from L.A., where Kurt Russell's become more of an action star these days instead of like a Disney sweetheart anymore. And then you got Keith David, who plays his normal character, where he disagrees with characters, and then he gets into fights with them, and then he's always being stubborn. Remember They Live? Yeah, remember that scene? Good times, good times. But then you've got Wilford Brimley, rest in peace,
To diabetes.
known for the diabetes joke. Is that still a joke anymore? I don't know. Is it still a joke? I don't know, but who knows? Who cares? But rest in peace to Wilford Brimley. I really love this cast. I think there's some other faces. Excuse me. There's some other faces in this movie that I don't really recognize. Main ones I recognize was of course Kurt Russell, Keith David, and Wilford Brimley. I love all those guys in here. They do a great job throughout this entire movie, and especially Kurt Russell. I love Kurt Russell. Something that is really interesting about this movie, and I talked about this when I did my Evil Dead reviews. I really love the setting of this movie. What I love about the setting is that it's set in Antarctica and it's in like a base in Antarctica. What I love about it is kind of like a cabin in the woods, to where even if you tried to leave, where would you go? Where could you even go? To where it's just snow anywhere. And if you tried to leave and go outside and try to outrun the thing, you would freeze to death. And I think the thing would know that too. Is that that's why they're all sheltered, is because they know if they try to leave, they're gonna die. Because either ways, they're gonna die. Either they freeze to death or they become a thing. And that's why in this movie they even know that, and they blow up all of their shelters so the thing can freeze to death, basically, or so they can not become a thing and all that. That's why I love this movie, is because of the setting, and it's basically um a cabin in the woods type movie, to where if you try to leave, you can't go anywhere. Like where would you go in the Antarctica? It's fucking freezing cold. It's below 40 fucking degrees. Where would you go? I don't know, and I also just like the little shelter that they got there, to where they basically have everything that they need, but at the same time they're trying to be very cautious where they go, because it might make them look very suspicious. That's why I love this movie so much, because even if you tried to outrun the thing, you really couldn't, because you're in fucking Antarctica. Of course, we gotta talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to the thing. The amazing practical effects. What else should I say? The practical effects. This is the best practical effects I've ever seen in horror. Well, they have good ones too. The practical effects in the thing are just stunning and fantastic. To where every time I see very shitty effects in horror movies, like CGI blood, CGI deaths in horror movies, every time I think of that, it pisses me off, and then I just think of the fantastic effects in this movie to where if I watched like I don't know like a really early 2000s horror movie because those movies had like a lot of CGI blood. If I were to watch one of those and to watch The Thing, you would go, "What is wrong with society? This movie was only made for $25 million, and look what the fuck they were able to pull off." You know, I bet you, if they tried to do that in modern day, it would look as good. That's why I love Terrifier 2 and its effects, because it's fucking fantastic, and it's the only movie do I think it's become this fucking close to The Thing for best practical effects. That's how much I love the effects, because some of these effects are like breathtaking to where you're like, holy shit, how the fuck were they able to pull that off? Like, because even for the time, people weren't ready for this type of shit. Like during the 80s, this was probably like stunning to the audience. They were like, "Oh, what the fuck am I watching?" That is probably how people felt when watching this movie back then, because that is how great the practical effects in this movie are, because they're just stunning and great. That is how much I love those practical effects. My favorite scene when it comes to the effects is when the little head grows crab legs. Like, cause that scene is great, like, when the guy gets his hands bitten off, and then the alien is burning, and then the head starts to rip off, and then it just crawls away. That that just shows how great practical effects are, especially the first scene where you see them, when it's, like, the dog kennel. Enough said. What else do I need to convince you that they're amazing? I've seen a lot of people actually criticize this movie when it comes to the characters, but I think that we get to know them well, but that's not the reason. A lot of people actually criticize the characters because they're always turning on each other. I've seen some reviews to where people say they don't like the characters because they're always turning on each other, they don't know when to trust each other, they just keep arguing the entire movie, it's hard for them to be likable. But here's the reason why they keep bickering with each other. If you were in their situation to where there's an alien in your area, there's a slight chance that you might get infected by an alien. What would you do when you're surrounded by like 4 to 6 other people? What would your response be? Because you could be infected and die from an alien, and you could possibly go over and fuck up your friends later on. I understand why these characters are turning on each other, not getting along with each other, bickering with each other, thinking that this guy's the thing and they can't trust each other. This character doesn't want to go with them because they don't trust them. That's the point. These characters aren't meant to be trusting each other. They're in a fucking situation where aliens could be fucking killing them. What would you do if you were in this situation? You would be like, "Oh, fucking high five, bro. Let's go kill some fucking aliens." No. Your reaction would be terrified, not trusting anybody. You would only try to trust yourself and try to keep yourself safe because you don't know who the fuck to trust. Anyways, I don't understand why people would criticize the movie for that, but you're not meant to. These characters are not trying to betray each other. They just don't trust each other because they're scared and they don't know what to do in the situation. Think about it. Probably my favorite scene, favorite. Oh my god, my favorite scene in this entire movie is the blood test scene. I fucking love that scene to where it kind of gets scary as you watch it too, because basically the entire blood test scene where McCready sees that when they torch the one alien to where his head comes off, it was a Norris thing where his head comes off, but then you realize every part of the thing is a different system to where every organ to the thing has its own function. So he believes if they draw their blood and test it by putting a hot needle in there, it'll have some sort of reaction, and then one by one they do it. Everybody draws their blood. McCready puts the needle in there, but then you get the what's the old guy's name? I forget the old guy's name. Where he says, "There's like, oh, this is pointless. It's not gonna prove anything." Then McCready's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna do you last, and I'm gonna show you that you're a thing." But at that same moment, as the audience is thinking, it's like, "Oh, I think he's the thing," and then all of a sudden he puts it, says, "Holy shit! What the fuck just happened?" And then
Will do you last.
the blood just comes alive, and then that is probably the greatest jump scare ever. Not with loud noises, not with anything. The Thing and The Exorcist 3 are in fucking contenders for best jump scare ever in a horror movie. Because what I love about that scene where when it comes to the jump scares, because one by one you're like kind of sitting in your chairs like, oh god, it's oh he's okay, oh god he's okay. But when the movie slowly starts to calm you down, like nothing's happening yet, you don't know nothing's happening, nothing has happened yet, and then the one character you're suspicious on after he says it won't work and that it's pointless, you're like, oh I think this is a scene, and then finally something happens and the fucking blood comes to life. And then the characters are freaking out. The guy who's infected, he starts fucking screaming around. And then his head just comes apart, and he fucking kills Windows. I fucking love the scene, man. If you have not seen The Thing, watch that scene on YouTube. If you watch that one scene on YouTube, you're gonna want to watch the rest of this movie. I fucking guarantee you. I love that blood test scene. It's beautifully made. It is perfectly directed, acted, choreographed. Like one thing that I noticed when I watched this movie, and it comes to the cinematography, what was the guy's name? Palmer? Yeah, Palmer, the stoner guy. The one thing I noticed is like when I was watching the movie, his area right here was more darker during the scene. Like during like the movie it was like normal, but during this specific scene, like this area of his face was much more darker. You couldn't even see him. I'm like, oh, that looks weird. And I even looked it up, and Dean Cundy, who was the cinematographer of this movie, said that was a hint that he was a thing, was the lack of light on this side of his face. That is absolutely fucking perfect. So the final thing I will talk about this movie is the ending theory. Now there have been so many theories about this movie. The first one is like Childs is the thing because his breath doesn't fog up. He's really drinking gasoline or something. Well, I'm gonna say this about those two things. One, when it comes to the breath, I don't think that's a big theory because the ginger guy, I forget his name. What was the guy's name? I forget his name. When he becomes a thing, you can clearly tell that he has breath, and it's not very hard to see that he has it. And when it comes to the gasling thing, now remember this: the thing takes when it takes control of you, it has your memories and thoughts, and has your personality. That's how you don't know if anybody's a thing. And that doesn't make any sense because if it gains the knowledge and personality of somebody, I think they would know when you're drinking gasoline. Enough said. But here's how I look at it. I believe child is a thing. The child's is a thing at the end of the movie. Here's why. The reason I believe because when we see him, he is tired and dozing off. McCready tells him if he sees Palmer coming back and he's not with them to kill him. But when you see him, there's a dark blue coat behind him, and Childs himself is wearing a dark blue coat. But a really long extended shot showing us around the base, we see that the door is open, Childs is gone, but the dark blue coat behind him is gone and has been replaced with Blair's coat. What was it, Blair? Yeah, Blair. Did I say Palmer earlier? But you see that Palmer's coat is now behind him now. And the next time we see Childs, he's running off into the storm and the power goes out. We then see Childs at the end of the movie talking to McGreedy, and then he says that he left his post because he saw Blair out in the storm. But that story doesn't add up to me. One, maybe that could be true, maybe because in the storm he didn't know, maybe he saw something moving around, so he goes to check on it. But it wasn't Blair. Why? Because Blair was downstairs destroying the generator because as Childs was leaving, the power goes out. So Blair was downstairs destroying the generator. Now either Childs was lying, or maybe since he might have insomnia and might be seeing things and is paranoid, maybe he saw something outside, and so he goes to check on it. But I don't think that's what it is. I believe Childs went outside because his thing was going to freeze itself, but as he saw that everything was burnt to the ground and everything, maybe McCready gave Childs the drink because here's the thing, a small particle of the thing can get you infected. So McCready was testing Childs, gave him the drink, but Childs showed no fear of taking a drink out of it. And McCready at the end of the movie starts laughing. So I believe McCready gave Childs the drink because he was testing him, but failed because he showed no fear of taking a drink out of it. That is why I believe Childs is the thing. But the only hiccup to my theory, and it has to do with the prequel, but I don't like to acknowledge it, but it could play a key part to this movie. My only hiccup is that Childs still has his earring that he wears throughout this movie. One key moment in the prequel to this movie shows that a thing cannot regenerate a metal particle. It can't put, like, you know how you have like metal things on your teeth. It can't redo braces. It can't put re doesn't it can't remake like earrings or something like that. That's the only hiccup I have. But yet again, that prequel came out 30 years after this movie, so I also just don't like to acknowledge the prequel. If you were to include the prequel to this movie, I guess you could say, or maybe the thing just learned from its mistake and just put a child's earring back in. Maybe, but I don't know. But analyzing every moment of this movie, I've always thought the child's is a thing. Oh my god, I can't speak. One more thing, actually. This is something I forgot to mention. I think this movie has great social commentary. Now, remember when I was talking about how this movie was not well received on its initial release? I think this might be another reason. It's because during the 80s, this was actually around the first time they discovered AIDS. And at the time, people did not know how you got AIDS. No one knew how you got AIDS, and people were scared of it. This movie also kind of has social commentary, like, you don't know who's the thing, they don't really know how the thing exists, really. And I think that's another reason why people didn't like this movie at the time, is because of the AIDS pandemic, basically. And that's kind of plays a key part in this movie. People didn't know how you got AIDS, people were very secure of each other, they were scared of each other. This movie's basically that. People are scared of each other. They don't know who's the thing, who's the thing, like that. Like when the AIDS happened, no one knew how you got the thing, how you got AIDS. No one knew who had AIDS at the point. That is why I love this movie too, is because it also plays a little key part of social commentary in here. It's just like it just adds a little something here and there. All in all, guys, this is a perfect movie. I love John Carpenter's The Thing. It's one of my favorite horror movies ever made. It's probably in my top 5, if not top 3. I love this fucking movie. And if you're in the horror community and you've never seen this movie, what the fuck are you doing? So John Carpenter's The Thing is an absolute classic for a reason. If you've not seen this movie, please do yourself a favor and check it out. This is a movie where you definitely need to go out and buy it. What do you guys think about John Carpenter's The Thing? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Let me know in the comments below and we will talk about it. If you like this video, like it. If you love it, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you will get notified for my latest videos. And of course, until my next video, I'll see you all next time.